The war had lasted 30 years. 30 years of burning planets, dying soldiers, and broken promises. The Valori Confederacy was losing, and everyone in the galaxy knew it. High Commander Talix stood in his command center, watching the holographic map flicker with red markers. Each red dot was a lost colony. Each fading light was another defeat. The Drath Empire had pushed them back to their final systems, and soon there would be nothing left to defend. His advisors had suggested surrender. His generals had suggested one final stand. But Talix had a different idea. A desperate idea. An idea that made his senior officers look at him like he had lost his mind. He would ask the humans for help. The humans were a young species. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They had no great fleets. They had no powerful weapons. What they had was a reputation. A dark, whispered reputation that spread through every corner of the galaxy. The humans were violent. The humans were unpredictable. The humans had spent most of their history fighting each other, developing new and terrible ways to kill. Other species found them disturbing. Their art was full of war. Their history was written in blood. Their entertainment showed death and destruction as casual things. Most species avoided Earth. They kept their distance from the small blue planet and its dangerous inhabitants. But Talix was desperate, and desperate leaders make desperate choices. The message he sent to Earth was simple. He offered payment. He offered technology. He offered a place in the galactic community. All he asked for was soldiers. Not many. Just enough to fill the gaps in his defensive lines. Just enough to slow down the Drath advance while his people evacuated their remaining colonies. He expected negotiations. He expected demands. He expected the humans to ask for more than he could give. What he got was a single reply, sent within 1 hour of his request. Sending 1 battalion, 800 soldiers. Commander Colonel Park Doan. Arrival time? 14 standard days. Talix stared at the message for a long time. 800 soldiers. He had asked for 10,000. He had hoped for at least 5,000. 800 was nothing. 800 was an insult. But he had no other options, so he accepted. 14 days later, the human ships arrived at Valori Prime. They were small vessels, ugly and functional, with none of the elegant curves that other species preferred. They looked like machines built for a single purpose. With no thought given to beauty or comfort, Colonel Park Doan came aboard the Velor command station alone. He was a small man by human standards, with black hair cut short and eyes that seemed to look through everything they saw. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations, no medals, no signs of rank, except for the insignia on his collar. Talix had prepared a speech. He had practiced words of welcome, words of gratitude, words that would make the humans feel important and valued. But when Park entered the room, something about the man made those words die in Talix's throat. Park did not smile. He did not offer greetings. He simply stood before the holographic map and studied it in silence. "You are losing badly," Park said finally. His voice was quiet, almost soft. "Your fleet strength is at 12%. Your supply lines have been cut in 6 places. Your civilians are starving on 4 colony worlds. The Drath will reach your home system in approximately 2 months. Talix felt his face flush with shame. "We have fought bravely. The Drath simply have greater numbers." "Numbers mean nothing," Park said. "Strategy means everything. You have been fighting this war like it is a game with rules. The Drath have been fighting it like they want to win." He turned to face Talix, and the High Commander felt a chill run through his body. There was something wrong with this human's eyes. Not physically wrong. They were normal human eyes, brown and unremarkable. But there was something behind them, something cold and patient, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Where will you station us?" Park asked. Tall IX called up a section of the map. "Outpost Kira 7. It is a mining colony on the edge of Drath-controlled space. We need you to hold it for as long as possible, to slow their advance while we evacuate the outer systems." Park studied the location. "You are sending us to die," was not a question. Talix felt his shame deepen. The outpost is strategically important. If you can hold it for even a few weeks, we will take the assignment, Park interrupted. But I need to be clear about something, High Commander. We are not here to die for your Confederacy. We are not here to fill gaps in your lines. We are not here to be sacrificed. Then why are you here? Park's lips moved into something that might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. We are here because your message reached Earth during a very boring decade. We are here because my soldiers have spent too long training for wars that never came. We are here because humans need conflict the way other species need food or water. He turned back to the map. We are here because we want to be. And that should frighten you more than anything the Drath have ever done. 2 days later, the human battalion departed for Outpost Kira 7. Talix watched their ships disappear into faster-than-light travel, and he felt a strange mix of hope and dread. He had invited something dangerous into his war. He had opened a door that could not be closed, but he had no other choice. The Drath were coming, and 800 humans were all that stood between them and total victory. On the bridge of the lead human vessel, Colonel Park sat in his command chair and reviewed the data on Outpost Kira 7. Beside him stood Major Yoon Hana, his second in command. She was tall for a human woman with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. The Valori have given us outdated ships, minimal supplies, and a position they expect to fall within days, she said. They are treating us as disposable. Park nodded slowly. They are. This insults us. Our soldiers deserve better. They do. Park's voice remained calm, almost pleasant. But Major, consider this. The Velor expect us to fail. The Drath do not even know we exist. No one is watching us. No one is giving us orders. No one is telling us what we can and cannot do. Hannah's expression changed as she understood. We have complete freedom. Complete freedom, Park agreed. And 800 of the most dangerous soldiers humanity has ever produced. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The Velori wanted cannon fodder. The Drath wants easy victories. Both of them are about to learn a very important lesson about making assumptions. What lesson is that, sir? Park opened his eyes, and for the first time since arriving in Valori space, he smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Never invite humans to your war. Because once we arrive, it stops being your war. It becomes ours. The first Drath reconnaissance fleet vanished on a Tuesday. 3 ships, 40 crew members each, sent to scout the outer edges of Velor territory. They reported finding nothing unusual. They reported preparing to return home. Then their signals simply stopped. The Drath High Command was not concerned. Equipment failed sometimes. Ships were lost to asteroid impacts or engine malfunctions. These things happen in war. The second fleet vanished on Friday. 5 ships this time, including 1 heavy cruiser. Same pattern. Normal reports, then silence. No distress calls. No emergency beacons. Nothing. Now the Drath were concerned. The third fleet vanished the following Wednesday. 7 ships. The largest reconnaissance force the Drath had sent in months. They had been ordered to investigate the disappearance of the first 2 fleets. They found nothing. They reported nothing. Then they, like the others, simply ceased to exist. Grand Admiral Vekris stared at the star map in his command center and felt something he had not felt in 20 years of war. He felt afraid. What is out there? He demanded. What could destroy 15 ships without leaving any trace? His officers had no answers. They had theories. A new Valori weapon. A natural phenomenon. Some kind of spatial distortion. But theories were not answers, and answers were what Vekris needed. He sent an investigative force. 20 ships, fully armed, with orders to find and destroy whatever was killing his scouts. They spread out across the region where the fleets had vanished, scanning every asteroid, every moon, every empty piece of space. They found nothing. The region was quiet, empty, normal. Then, on the 3rd day of their search, they received a transmission. It came from a single small vessel that appeared on their sensors without warning. The ship was ugly and functional, with no elegant curves. built like a machine designed for one purpose. The transmission was simple. It contained coordinates and a single phrase in the Drath language: "Come and collect your dead." Admiral Vecrus ordered his fleet to those coordinates. What they found there would haunt the Drath Empire for generations. The missing soldiers were there. All of them. Thousands of Drath crew members from 15 different ships, sitting in neat rows on a barren moon. They were alive. They were breathing. Their hearts were beating, but something was terribly wrong. They did not respond to voices. They did not respond to touch. They simply sat there, staring at nothing, their eyes wide and empty. Some of them trembled, some of them made small sounds like animals in pain, but none of them spoke. None of them moved. Medical teams rushed to examine them. The doctors found no physical injuries. No wounds, no signs of torture. The soldiers were physically healthy, but their minds were destroyed. What did this to them? Vecrus demanded. The answer came 3 days later, after the doctors had spent hours trying to break through the soldiers' catatonic states. One of them, a young communications officer, finally spoke. Just 2 words, repeated over and over again. The humans. The humans. The humans. Lieutenant Quan Suben had spent her career studying how minds work. She understood fear better than anyone else in the human military. She knew that fear was not just an emotion. Fear was a tool. Fear was a weapon. In the right hands, fear could be more powerful than any bomb or bullet. When she arrived at Outpost Kira 7, she immediately began studying the Drath. She read every document the Valori had about them. She watched recordings of Drath prisoners. She analyzed their brain structure, their social patterns, their deepest instincts. What she discovered was fascinating. The Drath had evolved as prey animals. Millions of years ago, they had been hunted by larger predators on their homeworld. They had survived by being cautious, by being alert, by remembering every threat they encountered. Their brains were designed to hold on to fear. What scared a Drath once would scare that Drath forever. Subin smiled when she read this. She had found her weapon. The operation took 2 weeks to prepare. Svubin worked with the battalion's technical specialists to create something new. Something terrible. A perfect combination of light, sound, and chemical agents designed specifically for Drath biology. When the Drath scouts arrived, the humans did not fight them. They captured them. They brought them aboard their ships and exposed them to Sabin's creation. The soldiers experienced 12 hours of carefully designed psychological horror. They saw things that did not exist, heard sounds that came from nowhere. They felt their deepest fears come alive and walked toward them in the darkness. Screamed until their voices broke, and then they screamed more. When it was over, their minds were empty. The fear had burned through them like fire through dry wood, leaving nothing behind but ash. Subin felt no guilt about what she had done. This was war. The Drath had burned Velori colonies. The Drath had killed millions. The Drath had shown no mercy to their enemies. Why should she show mercy to them? Besides, she had not killed anyone. The soldiers were alive. They would live long lives in medical facilities, cared for by doctors and nurses, simply would never fight again. They would never threaten anyone again. They would spend their remaining years trapped in their own minds. Prisoners of memories that would never fade, Colonel Park reviewed Sabin's report and nodded with approval. Excellent work, Lieutenant. You have removed thousands of enemy soldiers from the war without firing a single shot. Thank you, sir. But I should warn you, the Drath will respond. They will send everything they have to destroy us. I am counting on it, Park said. Major. Yoon has been preparing for that moment since we arrived. When the Drath come, they will find us ready. He sent a message to Valori High Command that night. The message was brief. We have introduced the Drath to human creativity. We did not enjoy the lesson. Expect retaliation. We welcome it. High Commander Talix read the message 3 times. He did not understand what it meant. He requested clarification. He received no response. 3 days later, intelligence reports reached him about what had happened to the Drath reconnaissance fleets, got about the soldiers on the moon. He read about their empty eyes and silent screams. He read about the young communications officer who could only say 2 words, Talix, sat alone in his office for a long time after reading those reports. He had wanted help. He had wanted soldiers to slow the Drath advance. He had not wanted this. He had not wanted monsters. But he had invited the humans into his war. He had opened the door and welcomed them inside. And now, whatever happened next, he could not close that door again. The humans had arrived. The galaxy would never be the same. The Drath Emperor was not a patient being. When he learned what had happened to his soldiers, he did not ask questions, did not request explanations. He simply gave an order. Destroy them. Destroy them all. Leave nothing behind. The Black Fleet was the pride of the Drath Empire. 50 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering. 20,000 soldiers, each one trained from birth for combat. They had never lost a battle. They had never retreated. They were the hammer that crushed all enemies of the Empire. Grand Admiral Vecris himself commanded the fleet. He had sworn a personal oath to the Emperor. He would find these humans, would kill every single one of them, would burn their bodies and scatter their ashes across the empty void of space. The journey to Outpost Kira 7 took 6 days. During that time, Vecris studied everything his intelligence officers could find about humans. He learned about their homeworld. He learned about their history. He learned about their wars. What he read disturbed him. These creatures had spent their entire existence fighting each other. They had developed weapons that could destroy cities. They had created poisons that could kill millions. They had built machines designed only for death. But they were primitive. Their technology was a century behind the Drath. Their ships were small and weak. Their weapons were outdated. Numbers and firepower would win this battle, as they always did. When the Black Fleet arrived at Outpost Kira 7, they found exactly what they expected: a small mining colony, a handful of ugly human ships. 800 soldiers against 20,000? This would not be a battle. This would be an execution. All ships, advance, Vecris commanded. Destroy everything. The Black Fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their weapons charged, their shields activated, their targeting systems locked onto the human vessels. And then everything went wrong, Captain. Shin Junho had spent the past month doing something the Drath would have considered impossible. He had taken apart captured Drath technology piece by piece. He had studied every component, every circuit, every line of code. He had found something interesting. Dot shields operated on a rotating frequency pattern. The pattern was complex, designed to be unpredictable. But Junho was a human engineer, and human engineers did not believe in unpredictable. They believed that every system had a pattern and every pattern could be broken. It took him 6 days to crack the algorithm. Once he understood it, he could predict exactly what frequency any Drath shield would use at any moment. He shared this information with Sergeant Bay Myra. Myra was a demolitions expert. She had joined the military at 18 because she liked explosions. She liked the science of destruction, the mathematics of force and pressure and heat. Other soldiers found her enthusiasm disturbing. She did not care. When Junho showed her the shield frequency data, Myra spent 3 days in her workshop. When she emerged, she carried a new type of weapon. It looked like a standard mining charge, but it had been modified in ways that would have made the Valori weapons designers weep with envy. The charges were designed to sync with Drath shield frequencies. They would pass through the shields as if they did not exist. They would detonate inside the ships, directly against the reactor core. The Drath had built walls to protect themselves. Myra had built keys to walk through those walls. When the Black Fleet began its attack, the humans did not run. They did not hide. They emerged from the asteroid field where they had been waiting for days, and they attacked. Mining vessels that the Valori had considered useless now carried weapons that no one had ever seen before. Human fighters, small and fast, darted between the massive Drath warships like insects around giants. They did not try to destroy the ships with firepower. They simply attached Mira's charges to the hulls and flew away. The first Drath ship exploded 7 minutes into the battle. The explosion came from inside, from the reactor core that had been breached by a charge that should not have been able to penetrate the shields. The second ship exploded 30 seconds later, then the third, then the fourth. Grand Admiral Vacruz watched in horror as his fleet began to die. "How is this possible?" he screamed. "Our shields are active. Our shields are at full power." No one could answer him. No one understood what was happening. The humans were not supposed to be able to do this. Their technology was primitive. Their weapons were weak. This was not possible. But possible or not, it was happening. Major Yoon Hannah commanded the battle from the bridge of her vessel. She had spent weeks planning this engagement, running simulations, preparing for every scenario. She had studied Drath tactics. She had learned their formations. She had predicted their responses. The Drath fought like machines. They followed patterns. They trusted their technology. They believed that superior numbers and firepower would always win. Humans did not fight like machines. Humans adapted. Humans improvised. Humans found weaknesses and exploited them without mercy. "Target their command ship," Hannah ordered. "Remove their leadership." A team of fighters broke away from the main engagement. They carried the largest of Myra's charges, designed specifically for the Grand Admiral's flagship. They weaved through defensive fire, dodged counterattacks, and reached their target. The charge attached to the flagship's hull and passed through its shields. 3 seconds later, the ship exploded in a ball of white fire. Grand Admiral Vecrus died without understanding what had killed him. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it was over, 23 Drath ships had been destroyed. 19 had been captured. 8 had fled, carrying survivors who had spread tales of what they had witnessed. The humans had lost 12 soldiers. 12 against 20,000. Colonel Park walked through the captured Drath flagship, examining the technology, collecting data, making notes. Beside him walked Captain Junho, already planning improvements for the next battle. "The Drath believed their shields made them invincible," Junho said. "They trusted their technology completely." "That was their mistake," Park replied. "Humans never trust technology. We know that every system can be broken, every defense can be penetrated, every advantage can be overcome." He stopped and looked out a viewport at the wreckage of the Black Fleet. Ships that had terrified the galaxy now floated dead in space. "Destroyed by a force no one had seen coming, we adapt," Park said quietly. "That is what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons, not our numbers. Our ability to look at any situation, find the weakness, and exploit it. Other species build walls, we build ladders." He turned away from the viewport. "Send a message to Major Yoon. Tell her to begin preparing offensive operations. The Drath thought this war was about territory. They were wrong." "What is it about, sir?" Park smiled his cold, empty smile. "It is about teaching the galaxy a lesson. And we have only just started the first chapter." High Commander Talix could not sleep. He had not slept properly in weeks, not since the reports started coming in. Reports of impossible victories. Reports of Drath fleets destroyed by a handful of human soldiers. Reports of weapons that should not exist, tactics that should not work. Results that should not be possible. He had invited the humans to slow the Drath advance. Instead, they had stopped it completely. They had reversed it. They had turned 30 years of losing into something that looked almost like winning. He should have been happy. He should have been celebrating. The Valori Confederacy was being saved by their new allies, but Talix was not happy. Talix was terrified, because the humans were no longer waiting for orders. They were no longer defending positions. They were no longer fighting the war the Valori wanted them to fight. They had started their own war, and it was far more terrible than anything Talix had imagined. Private First Class Otewu was 19 years old. He had joined the military because he had nothing better to do, because his friends had joined because it seemed like an adventure. He had trained for 3 years. He had learned to fight, to shoot, to survive. He had never expected to lead a mission that would change the fate of 3 billion people. The assignment was simple. For soldiers, 1 shuttle, 1 target. The main power grid of Drath Prime's agricultural sector. Without power, the automated farms could not function. Without farms, the food would not grow. Without food, the population would starve. Taiwu did not think about the 3 billion Drath who depended on those farms. He did not think about the children who would go hungry, the elderly who would suffer, the families who would watch their food supplies disappear. He thought only about the mission, the target, the objective. The shuttle landed on Drath Prime without being detected. Human stealth technology was crude compared to other species, but it was good enough. They moved through the night, four shadows against the darkness, till they reached the power facility. The guards never saw them coming. The security systems never triggered. The alarms never sounded. Taiwu placed the charges himself. Small devices, no larger than his fist, designed to overload the power grid's central processors. When they detonated, they would not cause explosions. They would simply make the computers think they were overheating. The safety systems would shut everything down automatically. The entire operation took 16 minutes. When Taiwu returned to the shuttle, he reported his success to Colonel Park. The colonel thanked him and ended the transmission. 3 hours later, the power grid failed. The automated farms went dark. The harvesting machines stopped. The irrigation systems shut down. 3 billion Drath would face starvation within months. Colonel Park did not attack civilians. He did not kill innocents. He did not bomb cities or murder families. That was not the human way of war. The human way was far more elegant, far more terrible. Across Drath space, small teams of human soldiers appeared without warning. They did not attack military targets. They attacked infrastructure. They destroyed communication relays, leaving entire systems unable to call for help. They sabotaged water purification plants, making clean water a luxury. They disabled transportation networks, stranding supplies and troops far from where they were needed. They never killed unless they had to. They simply demonstrated with perfect precision that they could kill whenever they wanted. That every Drath citizen on every Drath world existed only because the humans allowed it. The Drath Empire began to collapse from within. Not from battle, but from fear. Citizens demanded protection that the military could not provide. Leaders blamed each other for failures that no one could prevent. Trust in the government crumbled as people realized that no one was safe. The emperor watched his empire fall apart and felt something he had never felt before: desperation. He contacted the Valerie High Command and demanded to speak with the human commander. Talix tried to arrange the meeting, tried to maintain some control over the situation, but Park refused to go through the Velour. Instead, contacted the Emperor directly. The conversation was broadcast across Drath Prime. Whether by accident or design, no one ever knew. Billions of Drath watched their Emperor speak to the human who had brought their civilization to its knees. "What do you want?" the Emperor demanded. His voice was heavy with fear and anger. "What will it take to end this? Name your price. Territory. Resources. Technology. What do you want?" Park's response was calm, almost pleasant. "Want? We do not want anything." "Then why are you doing this? Why are you destroying us?" "Because you've started a war," Park said simply. "You attacked the Valerie. You burned their colonies. You killed their people. You thought you could do these things without consequences? You were wrong. The Valorii are weak. They invited you to fight for them. They did. And we accepted. Not because we care about the Valorii. Not because we wanted payment or territory or power. We accepted because humans need wars the way other species need air. We accepted because we were bored. We accepted because we wanted to see what would happen." The Emperor stared at the screen in disbelief. "You destroyed my fleets, starved my people, broke my empire. Because you were bored?" "Partly," Park admitted. "But also because we wanted to teach a lesson. Not just to you. To everyone. The whole galaxy is watching this war. They are seeing what happens when someone invites humans into a conflict." He leaned forward, and his cold eyes seemed to look through the screen directly into the Emperor's soul. "We are not soldiers for hire. We are not weapons that can be pointed and fired. We are a force of nature, And once we are unleashed, we do not stop until the war is over. Not paused. Not negotiated. Over. Completely. Permanently. What do you want me to do? Surrender, Park said. Not to the Valor. To us. Announce to your people that the Drath Empire has lost. Accept whatever terms we decide to impose. Do this, and we will stop. Your people will live. Your civilization will survive, and if I refuse, Park smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Then we will continue. We will break every piece of infrastructure on every world you control. We will reduce your empire to isolated planets, each one alone, unable to communicate, unable to trade, unable to survive. Your people will not die in battle. They will die slowly, watching everything they've built crumble around them, knowing that they could have prevented it. He paused. We have been gentle so far, Emperor. We have shown restraint. Do not make us show you what happens when we stop being gentle. The transmission ended. The Emperor sat alone in his throne room, surrounded by advisors who had no advice to give, generals who had no battles to fight, an empire that had already lost. 3 days later, he announced the surrender. High Commander Talix watched the announcement with mixed emotions. The war was over. The Valori had won. 30 years of suffering had finally ended. But as he looked at the reports of what the humans had done, as he read about the psychological warfare, the infrastructure attacks, the systematic destruction of an entire civilization's ability to function, he felt no joy. He felt only one thought, repeating over and over in his mind. What have I done? What have I unleashed upon the galaxy? The answer would come soon enough, and it would terrify everyone who heard it. The surrender ceremony was held on neutral ground, space station at the edge of Valor territory. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy attended. They came to witness the end of the longest war in recent memory. They came to see the Drath Empire humbled. But mostly, they came to see the humans. The stories had spread across every world, every system, every corner of civilized space. 800 soldiers. 800 humans had done what 30 years of Valori resistance could not. They had broken an empire. They had ended a war. They had changed everything. Colonel Park stood at the center of the ceremony, dressed in the same simple uniform he had worn since arriving in Valori space. No medals, no decorations. Nothing to show that he had just accomplished the impossible. The Drath Emperor signed the surrender documents with trembling hands. He ceded 12 systems to the Valori Confederacy. He agreed to pay reparations that would take generations to complete. He accepted the dismantling of his military, the destruction of his war fleets, the end of everything his empire had been. When it was done, he looked at Park with eyes full of hatred and fear. You have destroyed us, no, Park said calmly. We have stopped you from destroying others. There is a difference. History will remember what you did here. I am counting on it. After the ceremony, High Commander Talix requested a private meeting with the human colonel. They met in a small room overlooking the stars, just the two of them, alone for the first time since this had all begun. You saved my people, Talix said. I should thank you, but you will not. I cannot. Talix struggled to find the right words. What you did? The methods you used? I asked for soldiers. I did not ask for this. Park nodded slowly. You asked for weapons that could be pointed at your enemies. You wanted controlled violence, limited destruction, a tool that would follow your orders and accept your limitations. Yes, that is not what humans are. Park walked to the window and looked out at the stars. We do not fight wars the way other species fight them. We do not accept limitations. We do not follow rules created by those who are losing. He turned back to face Talix. You invited us into your conflict because you were desperate. You thought you could use us, control us, point us at the Drath and then send us home when the job was done. Could I not? No. Park's voice was soft but absolute. From the moment you sent that message to Earth, the war stopped being yours. It became ours. And we fight our wars to win. Not to negotiate. Not to compromise. To win completely and permanently. You could have told me this before you accepted. Would you have listened? Would you have believed me if I told you that 800 humans could break an empire? You expected us to fail. You expected us to die buying time for your evacuations. You did not expect us to succeed. Talix had no response to this. It was true. Every word of it was true. What happens now? He asked finally. Now we go home. Park smiled, and for a moment it almost looked genuine. Our ships are already prepared. My soldiers are ready to depart. By tomorrow, there will be no human military presence in Valori space. Just like that? You win an impossible war and simply leave? We came because we wanted to. We leave for the same reason. Park moved toward the door. But before I go, I want to give you some advice. Hi, Commander. Free advice, worth exactly what you pay for it. What advice? Never invite humans into your wars again. Park stopped at the door and looked back. You survived this time because we were on your side. Because our enemies were your enemies. But we do not choose sides based on politics or justice or morality. We choose sides based on who asks first, who offers the best challenge, who gives us the most interesting fight. You are saying that next time you might fight against us? I am saying that next time you might not want to find out. He opened the door. Goodbye, High Commander. I hope we never meet again. 1 year later, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The topic was simple: what to do about humanity. The debates lasted for weeks. Some species wanted to destroy Earth before the humans became an even greater threat. Some wanted to isolate them, cut them off from the rest of the galaxy. Some wanted to befriend them, to bring them into the galactic community where they could be watched and controlled. In the end, they chose a different path. The Morrison Doctrine was named after Earth's ambassador, a woman named Kong Yuri, who had spent months negotiating with terrified alien diplomats. The doctrine was simple. No species could request hire or conscript human military forces for any conflict. Violations would result in immediate expulsion from the Galactic Council and complete economic isolation. The official name was the Morrison Doctrine on Human Military Involvement. The unofficial name spread faster. The Never Again Accords. Because the galaxy had learned something important. Humans were not soldiers. They were not mercenaries. They were not tools that could be used and discarded. Humans were a force of nature. Like a fire that could warm your home or burn it to the ground, depending on who controlled it. Like a storm that could bring life-giving rain or destroy everything in its path, you could not control a force of nature. You could only hope to survive it. 6 months after returning to Earth, Major Yoon Hannah was promoted to colonel. She was the new face of human military power. Giving interviews to alien journalists who wanted to understand what had happened in Valori space, one journalist, a young Valori reporter named Kessa, asked the question that everyone wanted answered. Colonel Yoon, if another species found itself in a desperate war, facing certain defeat, what would you tell them? Should they ask humans for help? Hannah considered the question carefully. She thought about the battles she had planned, the victories she had achieved, the enemies she had broken. She thought about the Drath soldiers who would spend their lives in medical facilities, the civilians who had faced starvation, the empire that had crumbled because humans decided to make it crumble. She thought about what it meant to be human, to carry within herself the capacity for both creation and destruction, to know that her species could build wonders or tear down civilizations. Depending on which direction they chose to point their endless energy. Finally, she smiled. It was a small expression, cold and knowing, the same smile that had haunted the nightmares of Drath commanders across an empire. I would tell them one word, she said. Just one word that they should remember whenever they think about involving humans in their conflicts. What word is that? Hannah leaned forward slightly, and her eyes caught the light in a way that made the journalist step back involuntarily. Don't. The interview ended. The journalist returned to her homeworld. She shared the recording with her editors, her friends, her family. Within days, it had spread across the galaxy. That single word became the unofficial motto of the Never Again Accords. It appeared on diplomatic documents, in military briefings, in history books that would be read for generations. Don't invite humans to your wars. Don't give them a reason to fight. Don't make enemies of a species that does not know how to lose, because humans don't fight fair. Humans don't fight clean. Humans fight to win. And when humans win, the losing side doesn't just lose the war, they lose everything. Colonel Park Do-eun retired 3 years after returning to Earth. He bought a small house in the mountains, far from cities, far from people, far from anything that reminded him of war. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit on his porch and look up at the stars. He would think about the battles he had fought, the enemies he had broken, the lesson he had taught the galaxy. He never felt guilty. He never felt regret. He had done what needed to be done, and he had done it well. But sometimes, just sometimes, he wondered what would happen the next time someone made the mistake of inviting humans to their war. He hoped he would not be around to see it, because if the galaxy thought what happened to the Drath was terrible, they had no idea what humans were truly capable of. That war had been a demonstration, a warning, a preview. The next one would be something else entirely, and somewhere, in the darkest corners of human imagination, plans were already being made for wars that had not yet begun. Because humans always had plans for the next war, it was simply who they were.